When was the last time you took an hour for lunch out of your business? Or when was the last time you thought to yourself, I need a break? We are certainly living in very different times, and my guest today is here to help us with all of perhaps the busyness and the overwhelm that we might be feeling today. Can't wait for you to hear my guest today. Hey, welcome to the Small Business Made Simple podcast, brought to you by socialmediaandmarketing.com.au. Being in business is never easy, but it can be simple, or at least simpler. Join me, your host Jen Donovan, every week where we focus on marketing, social media, and working towards simplifying your business. You with me? Let's do this.
Dream it big, 'cause someone out there listening. Everyone's got a voice to give, and it's time I heard you whistling, 'cause there's no point at all, in dreaming small.
Hey there, my fabulous listener. Welcome to episode 84 of the Small Business Made Simple podcast. Thank you, as always, for lending me your ears today. I know you have lots of choices out there, and I sincerely appreciate you making me one of them. If you're a first-time listener, then hey, super welcome to you. This is an awesome episode for you to be hearing the first time. I'm really happy that you're here with me. I am, of course, the host, Jen Donovan, and it's my job via this podcast and social media and just about everywhere else that I hang out to make your business life simpler. I'm a thought leader when it comes to marketing here in Australia, and I'm also a marketing strategist for small businesses. Why, you might ask? Well, because I know that business can be lonely, it can be hard, it can be complicated, and it's rarely easy, but it definitely should be simple, or at least simpler. So that, of course, is my commitment to you on the so-named Small Business Made Simple podcast. One of the ways that I can help make your life a little bit simpler is if you belong to my Facebook group called Like-Minded Business Owners. It's a great little community that's building every single day with awesome business owners out over there to really help you get some answers, but also enjoy the journey of business with. So if you haven't joined Like-Minded Business Owners, then head over there. I'd love to see you. Of course, you can get the link at the show notes, which are socialmediaandmarketing.com.au/84. Or of course, just head to Facebook and type in Like-Minded Business Owners and join up. This episode is actually sponsored by my 30-day social media and marketing challenge. This month's challenge is closed, but we are, taking names for a wait list. So if you're keen on upping your social media game and want daily accountability for 30 days from a really supportive community, as well as tips and tricks from a social media and marketing strategist, that's me, and a PR storytelling expert, which is Lindsay, then this challenge is for you. You can't get in right now, but there's definitely a wait list. To register for the waitlist, you can go to bit.ly, so bit.ly/Jen's waitlist. So bit.ly/Jen's waitlist. And you can join there. We'll be starting on the 1st of September. And so maybe you might be the person who needs to be challenged, and you can invest in yourself with your marketing, your social media, and your PR and your storytelling all in one place for 30 days. Today on the podcast, I have a guest. Now, I don't normally do back-to-back guest episodes, but this guest, Rachelle Glendon, is someone that I think that you need to hear from today, or this week, or whenever you are listening to it. At the time of this recording, Melbourne is in full lockdown. My border is like shakily open by the hair of its chinny chin. My clients are hurting so badly, and I, for one, am actually feeling more overwhelmed than what I was when we went into stage 3 lockdown way back in March. So I'm sort of feeling a little bit like I need Rachelle in my life, so I wanted to share her with you. I know, I'm pretty generous, aren't I? Rachelle's beautiful, calming voice is just what I needed to hear, and I thought that maybe that's what you needed to hear as well. Rachelle's business is How to Live Slow. She is a slow living coach, helping mums slow down and show up for everything that actually matters. Now, even if you're not a mum or your kids are grown up like mine, I still think this is a really great episode for you to listen to. There's some awesome ideas and thoughts that Rachelle puts around this whole slow living movement that she is actually a part of. Now, I know I need to learn to live slow, or at least a little bit slower. Hands up if that sounds like you as well. I know, I'm sure that most of you will put your hands up. And if you're listening in real time, then real time is actually the 6th of August 2020. Rachelle actually still has her doors open to her Slow Life course. Perhaps it's just what you need right now. You're welcome to go and check it out. Probably the best place to go and check out Rachelle's Slow Life course after you've listened to this episode, of course, is by going to howtoliveslow.com or How to Live Slow on Instagram. So without rambling anymore, here's Rachelle and let's have a chat about slowing down. Rachelle, I'm really excited to have you on the podcast today because we're going to talk about slow living, which is something I think a lot of my audience would be really interested in. But for those of the listening that perhaps don't know you, could you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Hi, Jen. Yeah, it's so lovely to be here. Thank you for chatting with me today. Yeah, so my name's Rachelle. I have a podcast as well. It's called How to Live Slow. There's a website involved and all of that good stuff. But I'm a slow living coach and I help mums who feel really overwhelmed and disconnected from, everything they've got to do and feeling that, the burden of motherhood. I help them to slow down and start to enjoy and feel fulfilled with their lives and, take off all the hats and just learn to relax a little bit. Personally, I have a husband. I've got 2 young boys. We live in sunny Brisbane, which is really nice, particularly at the moment in winter. It's actually the good time of year. So, yeah, we have a business as well outside of that, which is probably where I really learnt how slow living is a really valuable thing for business owners. That's me in a nutshell.
Oh, beautiful. And yeah, no, sunny Brisbane, like the borders have been closed for a little while, so I can't wait till I can get to sunny Brisbane again, hopefully in the not too distant future. But what is slow living? Like what does a slow living coach do?
Well, slow living, it actually started it's a philosophy, a lifestyle philosophy of, I like to say it's about understanding what your priorities are and doing less of the things that you feel burdened by and focusing more on what you really want out of life. Um, the philosophy started once upon a time, I think it was 1986. Some guys, Carlo Petrini in Rome, he actually started a protest because McDonald's was coming to town. So he started the slow food movement, which has kind of started off this revolution of the idea of slow living and living more in tune with, local customs and cultures and taking your time to do things well rather than fast. Yeah, so it's an antidote to the hustle culture that we really live in in life.
Yeah, and I think are Australians a little bit better at living slow? Like I know that all that hustle type culture, that is very much, I think, from a business point of view, from what I see, very much an American style. You listen to a lot of podcasts and they're like hustle, hustle, hustle. And, I think Gary Vee is the king of the hustle. But do you find in Australia that we are a little bit more adaptable to the philosophy that you're talking about?
I do, yeah. I think you're right there. I think Australians in general, we probably live busier lives than we'd like to, but we're very aware of the benefits of slowing down. Whether we know how to do that or not is another story.
Well,
But
this
we're
is why I've
definitely as
got you
well.
on the podcast to tell us how. Perhaps we already know why, but maybe we need to know some of the how. So obviously there's clearly some benefits and some detriments for, living slow or not living slow. What do you see in that, like, as a coach for the clients that you have, like some of the things that they think are the most powerful?
Well, yeah, like you said, the detriments of not living slow are a disconnection from what you're actually trying to achieve in your life. And I think understanding that there is a difference between achievement and fulfillment. Like we can
Mhm.
work towards goals and achieve a lot of things, but they may not leave us feeling really fulfilled. And I think, yeah, that is the biggest thing, particularly mums as well. Um, because we as women, we're taught we can have our careers and we can have kids and we can do all of the things, but if we do try to stretch ourselves too thinly across all of the things we think we need to have, um, and there is, it doesn't always go to plan. We can burn out really easily, but we aren't really showing up as the mum we imagined ourselves that we would be one day when we have our kids. There's pressure on us at work to show up there. And often it is the mums who renegotiate to work part-time, or, they're the ones who have the days off when the kids are sick, which then impacts their career and all of that. So, yeah, that understanding that fulfillment is probably a more um, satisfying goal to look towards rather than just achievement.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, I was just talking on a podcast interview yesterday with Pip from Jumbled Online, and we were talking about how, as women, but I guess it's probably everybody. It's not just women. We're taught that we can have it all,
Mm.
but we just can't have it all at once.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And the other saying that I like is we're expected to parent like we don't work and work like we don't have kids.
Oh, yes. Yes, I have definitely found that in my working career, which is probably one of the reasons why I now work for myself. But yeah, like, Pip and I were just saying, if work's going along swimmingly, there's every chance that your house is a complete mess or your children hate you. Or, if your children love you and your house is perfect, then there's every chance that, your inbox looks like a complete mess. So, yeah, yeah. Oh, goodness, I don't know.
I know, I know. I think it's a universal problem. And
So what drove you to this? Was there an instance, I guess you alluded to that at the start when you were saying you had another business that kind of showed you why slow living was important. Was there a particular line in the sand instance that happened? Not that you need to tell us what that is, but, or was it just something that grew on you over time?
it's something that's grown on me over time, but I also think, I was raised in the bush and we had a much slower life. I'm lucky enough to be of the age where I didn't have a mobile phone when I was a kid. And we had these weekends where we would, we didn't even have phone reception. I don't even think we had TV other than the ABC. So we had a lot of like outdoor time and things like that as kids. And I think when I became an adult, moved to the city, started working full time, studying full time, I realized that that was not it for me. I didn't want this hustle culture that I hadn't grown up with it, and I wasn't really adapted to it as an adult. Yeah, so that's kind of where it sort of started. But there was nothing. I felt like, how am I going to change this? This just seems like what you're supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
But then my husband and I met, and we started our business, and I realized that, yeah, this is the way. A lot of business owners feel really overwhelmed, especially at the start, with doing everything themselves. But we start our businesses because we want these lifestyles that are a bit different than the 9 to 5,
Mm.
where we can be a bit more, there for our kids. So I realized that I had to figure out with our business a way to show up for both, and to use that as an opportunity to do that.
Yeah. I think I often, and it's probably a little bit vice versa to what you're saying, but I often wonder what my children's lives will look like. Like, I'm married to a farmer, so he obviously makes his own hours. They work very hard, don't get me wrong, but it's not a 9 to 5 job. I don't have a 9 to 5 job. Like yesterday, I spent the entire day running around after my parents and after, doing different things. And so I wonder whether we aren't good examples, that they're going to never have a 9 to 5 job because they've never seen their parents with a 9 to 5 job. So I have to wonder, what their careers are going to look like.
Yes, I know what you mean, but and I also think that what a great opportunity you've given them to model a different way, and to, you
Mm.
know, you can actually have yesterday you got to help your parents,
Yeah.
which if you had a full-time job, you wouldn't have been able to do.
No, that's right. And that's one of the luxuries. I admittedly, I did then go and work till like midnight last night.
Yeah.
Because things still needed to be done. But that's so not the point we're trying to make here. So, Rachelle, with people who do wear many hats, like, I know that you're a slow living coach to women, but, there are, men out there who wear a lot of hats as well. What's a couple of tips that you can give them to perhaps to start looking at maybe slowing down or, embracing the principle of slow living?
Yeah, so I think with slow living, it's not doing nothing. It's not,
Yeah.
deciding, okay, I'm not going to do this or do that so that I can sit around and do nothing all the time. It's got to do with, obviously resting well and taking care of yourself. Um, but with slow living, it's about understanding what your priorities are. And by their nature, I think priorities, you can only have a couple.
Yeah.
So there are going to be things that you'll have to miss out on if you are going to choose. For me, it's my priorities are my family and helping my clients and my health. So I can't then expect to make my friendship, I've got to let go of some friendships or things like that, which obviously we all need social interaction, but it's just understanding that you can't wear all the hats all of the time, and that picking a couple of priorities, some of the things that you do want to do, you'll likely have to miss out on for the time being. Like you said, we can do it all, but we can't do it all at once. And cutting yourself a break, I think, is the biggest thing. We
Mm.
put so much pressure on ourselves to do it all. And we live in a world where everything, it feels like, especially if you've got a business or a creative business where you're online a lot, it feels like if you don't do it all now, you're going to miss the boat. But you're not. And that's a really hard realization to make, but it's really true. You're not going to miss the boat. Everything will happen for you at the time it's meant for you, even though it sometimes might not feel that way.
Yeah. I even find your voice calming.
Thank you.
And I
Uh,
feel like I'm in a therapy session because I know that this is a podcast and people can't see me, but I'm nodding along furiously.
oh,
Yes,
that's so
yes.
lovely. Thank you. Oh, that means I'm hopefully that means I'm doing my job well.
Yeah. I'm sure you are. I'm sure. Yeah, I know you are. I'm not sure. I know you are. So it's not just about self-care, like slow living, is it? It's just not necessarily about that. It'll mean different things to different people.
Yeah, it can mean, like there's so many aspects of slow living. There's like slow travel, which is something that's really
Ah,
enjoyable. Slow traveling has got to do with, we've done all these tiki tours where we've seen, 30 cities in 10 days, and we never really experienced any of it. Whereas if we went to one place and experienced, like, you know, going to the supermarket and seeing the different, ways that people live and experiencing the culture and that sort of thing. So that's slow travel. There's slow cities where cities are embracing more green space and more pedestrianism, and maybe not working on a Sunday, businesses closing on a Sunday, so that they prioritize family time and connection and not just hustle and growth and more. There's slow parenting, which has got to do with allowing your children, the time and space to be bored and become more creative. There's, Montessori and things like that you may have heard of. That's very in the slow philosophy. There's slow fashion, which is a
oh,
revolution
okay.
around, there's fast fashion, which is like really globalization and growth and, um, sweatshops and things like that. So slow fashion goes against that. It's all about making quality choices, purchasing,
Mm.
a capsule wardrobe where you only have a limited number of clothes that all kind of fit together, and you wear a bit of a uniform, like Steve Jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And choosing really well-made items, and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of sustainability that comes into it, not just for the environment, but for ourselves and what we can cope with as humans. So yes, it is a wide ranging philosophy.
Yeah. Okay. So when you're talking about, you know, slow living in, I forget the words you use. Sorry, I didn't quite write that one down. When you were talking about, slow cities and that sort of thing, it's almost, am I being too naive when I say it's almost like turning the clock back? Like, not opening Sundays and things like that. I remember my very first trip to Perth. My kids were only little, so, maybe 17, 16 years ago. And my son was really sick and we needed a chemist and there was no one open. And I was just like, is this a capital city or what? Like, it was kind of like, what do you mean the shops aren't open on a Sunday? Like, I know that it's changed now, but even back then it was kind of like, it was coming from, Melbourne being my capital city. Yeah, it was really strange to see that they were embracing, I guess, the ocean that they live on, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting that you raise that because when I was a teenager, I actually worked at a chemist. That was my high school
Ah,
job. And I grew up in a small town, and there were about 5 chemists in the whole town. And each Sunday, they each took it in turns to
mm-hmm.
be open, to be the one that was open for that reason. Obviously, there's circumstances, like you said, you need medicine on a weekend. But in general, though, it is turning the clock back a little bit.
Mm.
And, we want convenience, but at what cost?
Yeah.
There's other things, like obviously there's circumstances like medicine that are important, but there's other reasons that we want shops to be open on a Sunday that are more about convenience, that it's not necessarily, important. This Amazon Prime overnight delivery thing. I don't know that that's necessarily important or,
Yeah.
necessary.
Yeah, that's so true. I guess, just when you're talking about it, I was having a bit of a giggle to myself. One of the very touristy towns around me, opens on a Sunday because that is one of the biggest days of the week, is, because everyone wants to go for Sunday drives, but then they
Yes.
take Monday or Tuesday off. So they sort of compensate for that, Sunday that they have to open. But I often find, I want to go for a drive and relax, but then I expect all these shops to be open. So I've got something to do when I get there. It's kind of counterintuitive, isn't it? But anyway.
Yes, I know what you're saying. Yes.
So one of the things that I must say that, and I don't know whether this comes into slow living or not, but one of the things I really struggle with is the question of what are your hobbies? I don't have a hobby. And so is slow living, is having a hobby part of that ethos?
Yeah, so it's so with regards to hobbies, I know what you're saying because my husband doesn't have any hobbies. Or actually, no, that's not true. He does play golf, but when he's got time on his hands, he'll work on his business, and that, like, he's
Mm,
a workaholic. But what we've discovered with coronavirus with him is that he is so much more having time away and doing like a hobby type thing. We started doing puzzles together. It gives your brain a break to come back refreshed, and it may even give you more creativity or new ideas. It's good to have a break away from things so that you can come up with solutions to problems and that sort of thing. And I've actually been listening to, there's a developmental psychologist, Gordon Neufeld, and he talks about rest, and rest being not necessarily sleep, but a break. If you're working, rest can be a walk. If you're walking, rest can be sitting down. It's taking time away from what you're doing to have new perspectives and ideas. So yes, I think hobbies are really important, whether you live a slow philosophy or not. Um, for that reason, for that creativity and that problem solving space that it creates.
I must admit, some of my best ideas come when I'm in the bath.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you can have the hobby of having baths.
I'm going to embrace that. What's my hobby? Having a bath. I am so going to use that from now on, because I feel so bad when people say, what is your hobby? And I'm like, working. Anyway, we'll move on from that. But yeah, but then I find I get out of the bath and I have to come back to the office and put it all down before I forget. So it kind of, counts itself out, I guess, in the end. But no, I do like that. And puzzles, we tried puzzles during coronavirus. I think I should have started with like a 200 or a 300 because I bought 1,000 and I did like 10 pieces and that was it. I was like, I can't do this.
Oh, you've got to start with the edges.
I sorted it all into colours and colour schemes and edges and that sort of thing. And yeah, no, my husband and my daughter ended up doing it. It wasn't for me, unfortunately, or fortunately. This has been such a brilliant conversation. I just love. I would like to embrace it more. I guess at the end of the day, that's why it's piquing my interest so much. I live on a beautiful farm that has, nature all around me. And sometimes I find that I'm in the office all the time looking out at the farm rather than being on the farm. So I can't thank you enough for your knowledge and your wisdom around this sort of area that we're chatting about today. But before we go, do you have any other sort of words of wisdom or anything that we haven't sort of covered today that you'd like to share with my audience?
Yeah, the one thing I would say is that slow living is, it sounds like a nice to do, but it's also, it sounds really hard to implement. I mean, the ideas about slow living sound really easy, but it is actually hard to implement. And that's because we have the habit of being busy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important to know that you deserve to not be busy. And yeah, so it comes down to self-worth in a lot of ways, that you deserve to live the life that you want and not to constantly feel overwhelmed. And it may seem like you won't be able to make any changes to the life that you have now, but if you just start slowly, ironically, and it's a long game and it takes time to implement and to scale back your life. And even if it means starting with decluttering a few areas or something like that. But yeah, ultimately it comes down to self-worth, and you do deserve to make space in your life for everything that matters for you, and not to constantly feel like you're juggling balls and things are missing out, or you're missing out on living your life. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Is one of the sort of first steps to it working out what your goals are, and whether it's a goal that's going to fulfill you or just be an achievement, like you were saying earlier?
Yes, I think it's, we live in a goal-oriented world where, car, house, job, holidays, all of those things. But maybe those aren't the things that you really want. I would say have a look at what those goals would give you. What feeling are you trying to achieve by reaching to those goals?
Mm-hmm.
And then figure out, how can you feel that way now? And how can you, I love a goal, and I think goals are important, and it's really good to have direction. But I think when you are working towards a goal without having thought about the why, or what you need to feel, then that end point is never going to arrive. So when you know how you want to feel, say it's, the sense of freedom that you get from going on a holiday, how can you feel more free in your day-to-day life? And how can you implement that? And maybe then look at a goal that would be more fulfilling, rather than, and in terms of longer term goals, like what do you want to look back on your life and say that you achieved? And how does that look from a fulfillment point of view, rather than ticking off, society expectation goals? I hope that answers the question. That was a very, I guess, almost spiritual kind of top level answer.
I think it was very inspiring, and I think it's a fantastic place to leave our little chat, with people really pondering that last question and the last answer that you gave. I certainly will be pondering just that. I've written achievement and fulfillment quite big on my piece of paper here to have a bit more of a mull over as my days go by. Rachelle, how can people get in contact with you if you've inspired them, if they want to learn a little bit more about your slow living coaching, or, just a little bit more about slow living? What's the best way for them to get in contact?
Yeah, so I have a website. It's just howtoliveslow.com. And also you can find me on Instagram, and my podcast is the same name too. And I've recently discovered that you can listen to podcasts on Spotify. So if you don't have an iPhone, you can also listen on Spotify. Or if you don't have iTunes. But yeah, How to Live Slow, wherever you want to go, I'm probably there.
Perfect. Oh, look, this has been really good. Again, I think just listening to your voice is part of therapy. I'm sure that people will enjoy the episode for that as well. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom and having a bit of a chat to us about this. I really appreciate it.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine. Thank you so much for having me.
No worries. Thanks. Do you feel calmer after listening to that? I know I did. I've even listened to it a couple of times. Even her voice is soothing for me. But of course, that is it for episode 84. As mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, this episode has been sponsored by my 30-day social media and marketing challenge. If you want to go on the waitlist for that one, it's at bit.ly/Jen's Waitlist. So bit.ly/Jen's Waitlist. If you've got any questions about this episode, then always send me a DM on Instagram, or of course you can head into the Like-Minded Business Owners group and ask away there. I am always in that group. I will, of course, be back next Thursday with another great episode to help you simplify your business in 2020. If you're enjoying the podcast, and I'm assuming you are because you've listened this far, I would really love for you to leave a rating and a review and even subscribe to this podcast. And if you have a friend in business who perhaps needs to hear Rachelle's calming, soothing, how to live slow advice, then please share this episode with a friend who's doing that daily grind and would really appreciate you making their business life a little bit simpler. I will, of course, be back in the podcast next week for episode 85. But in the meantime, let's get social on social. You can find me at Instagram at Small Business Made Simple, Facebook, or of course, my favorite, LinkedIn. But whatever you do, my small business peeps, remember, as my opening song says, there is no point in dreaming small.
Star that you are. No point in dreaming small.